Bozzy, what's up?
Yep. Finally, can hear you well.
Sorry,
That's
I was in
great.
there. I was the only one in there. So I
Oh
didn't
no,
know.
I want to say finally that we could turn your sound off. We could turn your sound on. Okay, so I allowed you guys to demo the screen, and just in case y'all need it, both can demo the screen simultaneously. I know you probably is going to be just one person demoing, but just to make sure.
Mhm. He just wants to do like a single person talking like that. We might have to hide it at some point just to let the presentation be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Cool with that.
Yep.
All right. Ready, rock?
Yes,
Get it.
sir. So first of all, I just wanted to thank you guys for finding the time and just seeing your presentation that you did for Xavier Basketball and Barbells. It was amazing how you guys were able to work as a team, because that's really big. I haven't seen that before, and so when we were putting this summit together with Nick, I was like, man, they got to be on for sure.
Yeah.
So thank you
Yeah.
for finding the time to do it.
We're still trying to figure it out too, how to blend it with two guys on it. So, but I think we got it down pretty well.
Yep.
Yeah. Appreciate the opportunity, man.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right. You ready, Big Ern?
Let's get it.
Thank you for joining us here today. My name is Evan VanBecelaere. I'm currently the Director of Strength and Conditioning for the University of Oregon men's basketball team. And I'm here with my good friend, Ernie DeLosAngeles, the head strength and conditioning coach for the Stockton Kings, the G League affiliate of the Sacramento Kings. We'd like to thank Global Stars Basketball for providing us this platform to speak from today. And Ernie and myself are going to talk about a topic that we're both very passionate about, and that's, building relationships with your athletes, and more particularly in your work environment. Something that Ernie and myself believe we have seen done very well. It's something that, we work together with the Sacramento Kings, and we thought our staff took pride in that, which led to a great work environment, but then also, ultimately leading to, better performance for our athletes in the weight room. So let's get into it. Strong relationships for a strong work environment.
Like Evan stated, this is a topic that we're both very passionate about. But before we get into this presentation, we felt that we have to give honor and thanks to the people you see pictured here. Outside of being coaches, Evan and I are both husbands. We're fathers. We're sons and brothers, and we pride ourselves in our family. And we know that we wouldn't be able to do what we love without these people here. And then at the bottom, you'll see the staff there. And a lot of our conversation surrounding this topic was developed when we were working together with the Sacramento Kings. So, we wouldn't be able to present without them. So we just had to, give them a shout out and thank them as well. Now, a lot of this presentation is going to be from the perspective of the strength and conditioning coach or sport performance coach, but that doesn't mean that the principles can't be applied across different domains, whether you're on the medical side or whether you're a sport coach. And then, a lot of how we've seen the coach and athlete dyadic relationship unfold or develop, it was much like sport and the transitions you see in a game. So we related it to a game. And so in the first quarter, you have your foundation and your groundwork. And right after that, you have the second quarter, which is all about having a consistent game plan. And then the third quarter, that's just going through challenging times and how you're going to respond to it. And then last, we have the fourth quarter, and that's just creating an autonomy-driven atmosphere.
Yeah, so like Ernie said, by no means do we believe that we are sport coaches, but we did think it was appropriate to relate it back to the game. And so when I think of a game, and you first start off, you're probably just trying to, understand the flow of the game. You're trying to just get your feet wet, understand how the defense is reacting, how you're going to be able to, have a flow in the offense. That's very similar to a relationship, right? You're both just trying to understand each other's sides and just get a feel for it. So ultimately what that brings is that, in that first, introduction to a relationship, there's probably either the coach coming into a new environment or the athlete coming into a new environment, and each, you're probably going to have different ways that you approach each side. So with a coach coming into a new environment, the first bullet point that I bring there is use your easy buckets to help. That's what me and Ernie defined as easy buckets was basically the individuals that might be easier to build a relationship with versus others that, might be more difficult, take a little longer. So we say use your easy buckets to help facilitate and advocate for you to maybe get, start that buy-in with the ones that it's going to take a little longer with. Reach out and initiate more. I think we're fighting for that, that 50-50 of a relationship, the give and the take. But right now you're the new guy on the block. So you might have to, you might have to put yourself out there a little more. So it might be more of a 75-25 right now. Okay. Come in with the how I can help mentality. I think if you're coming in and you're trying to change a bunch of things right from the get-go, it's going to be tough to, for people to put that guard down. Right. But if you're coming in with the how can I help, where do I fit into this puzzle? I think people are going to be much more willing to want to, let that guard down and be able to work with you. Next, we get into the athlete into a new environment. So now this is the coach is established in his work environment, the athlete is entering. First thing I bring up is, have very clear expectations. So make sure that, if you have things that you really believe in, be upfront with those. Be very clear with what you expect of them. Ask about their expectations of you. I think this is something that we as coaches sometimes forget is to give the athlete an opportunity to ask what they expect of us. We're so worried about getting our expectations out to them that we don't give them that opportunity. But what this is going to do is I think most of the time they're not going to say anything. But what this is going to do is allow them to feel like they are part of that process, and they're going to respect you much more for giving them that opportunity to speak on something. Lastly, don't use all your bullets. It's another way that me and Ernie talk about, don't use all your asks, on the front end. And I think of this as usually when the athlete enters a new environment, there's probably been some time off, prior to that, whether that's been a few weeks or even during this time frame, we're talking about a few months. So you can probably start to think of a lot of things that you want to implement for the next coming season, right? And so you can get very excited about that. And but you have to understand that there's other staff members doing the same thing. The nutritionist, the athletic trainer, the video guy, the sport coach, whoever it may be, they all have asks too. And so your list of 10, maybe only one, or maybe not at all. Maybe you just need to save some of those bullets for a time frame when you really feel that it's going to be valuable, that you need to use one and to ask something of your athlete.
So during that first quarter, there's a lot of different approaches that we can take when developing the coach-athlete relationship. And Professor Joette found that a couple of these methods are restricted in some form. So she found when the athlete is at the center, it's restricted, as well as when the coach is at the center of the relationship, that's also restricted. And the only way that it was mutually empowering and mutually inclusive was when the coach and the athlete was at the center of the relationship. And so to get to that, we must gather information. And Dr. Becker, she describes this as the 4 dimensions. And so this is when the athlete and the coach are getting to know each other on a personal level, on an athlete and sport level, on an environmental level, and in the system as a whole. And so for the personal level, it's important as coaches that we get to know them outside of the sport before we try to actually coach them and teach them things. And so with that, it's important for us to get to know their background, get to know their upbringing, get to know some of their hobbies and interests outside of sport. And I think technology can be a great tool for us, especially for us coaches working with the younger population and the younger generation, mainly because that's their main form of communication. So, we have a lot of athletes that use social media, and that's the way that they express themselves. That's the way that they, share their interests with the world. And so I think that, that can be a tool for us to get to know our athletes. And then, like Evan mentioned before, sometimes we may have to be the ones to initiate the conversation. So, our athletes might not want to open up right away. and that's okay. You know, I think that's an opportunity for us as coaches to kind of share our personal side with them and let them know, look, this is who we are outside of coaches, and that helps them to be able to relate to us a little bit more. And then lastly, you'll see use your emotional intelligence. So that's just setting up boundaries and knowing when to try and drive those types of conversations and when not to. The goal is to be personal with the athlete, but we don't want to be too intrusive with them. And then once we've got to know them from the personal side, then we can kind of get to know them from the athlete side. And I think that's an opportunity for us, especially if we're new to the sport, to kind of ask some questions from the athlete and ask them, you know, maybe what the culture is like in the sport or with the team, or what are some of the nuances of the sport or the team. And, you know, that's just letting them know that we're not coming in thinking that we have all the answers or that we know everything, but that we want to learn and we want to get better, just like we want them to get better. And then under that, you'll see understand their position. So I think that's just relating to doing our due diligence and understanding, you know, one, watching the athlete in their sport, and two, like understanding who their competition is, what at their position. And that just goes to show them that, okay, show the athletes that, okay, yeah, we really care about them, and that, you know, we really want to try and help them get better. When it comes to gathering information regarding the dynamics of the environment and the outside variables, I think it's important to understand, you know, what are some of the sport coach demands? You know, what does he demand of the team, and what does he demand of that player specifically? And then, you know, some of us may be working with athletes that are amateur athletes, so they may still be in school. And, you know, we have to understand, you know, what are some of those dynamics surrounding that, you know, regarding the rigors of the academics. And then lastly, you'll see, you know, some of our athletes are away from home. Some of them are working, they're either playing overseas or they're playing, you know, across the country. And so we have to have an appreciation for that aspect as well. And Professor Jowett, she coined the term co-orientation. And so ultimately what it comes down to is all we're trying to do is find a common ground and a common language to relate to our athletes on. And John Wooden has a great quote that kind of sums that part up. And he says, you've got to study and analyze each individual and find out what makes them tick.
So we kind of just wanted to finish with kind of tying it all together for this. The first quarter was just, you know, this idea of trying to start the process of building this buy-in, you know, and the time that it takes to do so. And this slide was actually inspired by Coach Brett Bartholomew, in which he had a post on it most recently, and it talks about how what he actually said was trust plus commitment equals buy-in. And so this was just a diagram that Ernie and myself put together as a way that we envisioned that. You know, and ultimately what we're talking about is the commitment side is the intentions of the coach and the athlete to form that bond. You know, and right now we're building the trust, and, you know, because the commitment might be there right now because nothing negative has happened in the relationship. So you're trying to hold on to the commitment while you build that trust. And ultimately through time, you're investing all this time and understanding that this buy-in process does not happen quickly, but ultimately when you bring those two together, that's what you're going to receive is that buy-in process.
So the second quarter is all about a consistent game plan. And so the key here is that, you know, there may be a point where the relationship isn't where you want it, but you don't want to ditch the whole plan that you have set forth in the beginning or in the first quarter. You want to make sure that you stay consistent throughout. And I think Dwayne Johnson has a great quote on this. He says, success isn't always about greatness, it's about consistency. Consistent hard work leads to success. The greatness will come.
And so the first thing we think about when we're talking about consistency is knowing how to treat, you know, each player the same. You know, and so that's what we say there is treat 1 through 15 the same. Now we say 1 through 15 because Ernie and myself work in basketball. I mean, but this could be 1 through 30. This could be 1 through 100 if you work in football. You know, but knowing that you have to be able to treat your star point guard just like you would maybe your red shirt freshman, right? And so how do you do that? Well, we talked a lot about in first quarter setting those expectations. So make sure you're holding them accountable to those. You know, if you see it, say it. Don't wait for that time frame to address it. Knowing when to pump the gas and hit the brake. I think by this time you're going to start to understand the personalities of each athlete, and you're going to be able to know which guys that maybe you can say something to in a group setting versus those that maybe you can have to address more one-on-one. Right? You're still holding each guy accountable, but you're doing it to their each individual personality needs. The last bullet point we talk about there is was something from Dr. Becker's research. Gain respect out of love, not fear. And it was what they talked about in there was that the athletes actually could receive better coaching, when the coach actually gained their respect out of love rather than demanding it from fear. So continue to show that love to your athletes. That leads us in, to the next point there, that don't be a hero, just be human. We're trying to create this human side, so you can relate to your athletes. And so the first thing we talk about there is the similarity attraction theory. It's by Byrne et al., in which he talks about the theory that people have more of a comfortability or a likeness to those that are more similar to them, whether that's race, gender, age, whatever it may be. They have this certain likeness towards those people that are more similar to them. So try to create some of those similarities. You being human is more similar rather than trying to be that hero figure. But also you can try to maybe talk about a TV show that that they watch, or talk about some of the music that they listen to. That's going to create some of those similarities as well. Next bullet point there: don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are human. And we're probably going to be pointing out our athletes' mistakes quite often and correcting them. So make sure you own up to your mistakes and let them see that. Admit that you don't have all the answers. Again, that's also a human trait. And so you don't have to be the all-knowing guy. And also, I would say let them know that if they ask you a question and you don't know, tell them, hey, I don't know, but I'll find out. That way, when they when they ask you a question again, later on down the road, and you give them an answer, they can be confident that you did your homework, you did your research to provide such an answer. Last bullet point there, delegate when needed. I think as the strength coach at times, we try to be the guy that wears all the hats. We're okay taking on the sports science. We're okay taking on the nutrition. We'll take on the recovery specialist side, whatever it is, but understand we're not going to be good at all those things. And so rely on, your other staff members for that, whether that's your intern, your assistant, maybe a GA, someone else that you feel that maybe can carry that stick to those things, and so that you can hold your voice for the things that you find most valuable and things that you think you're best at. And ultimately, what we're talking about with that human side, is just remaining authentic, remaining to the person that you are. That first bullet point there, we say what you can't maintain will bleed out. I think about this as if maybe you've been in a previous role, or maybe you've been, or maybe last season, you let something go that led to something that you really didn't like the way that it carried out. And so you might try really hard at this time frame to not let that happen, right? And you might act as someone that you're not. You might be, someone fake or someone that you really aren't. And understand that your athletes are going to be the first person to see that. And so what you can't maintain will bleed out, and they're eventually going to be able to see that. So just own who you are. Be the same person every day. Every day they walk in those doors, let them see that same person that you are, that same authentic human person. That leads us in just to, the consistency side. Another thing from Dr. Becker's paper, consistent equals stable. And so what that really meant was that the ones that had the more stable emotions were very consistent in their coaching, and what the athletes felt like attributed to a lot of their success on the field of play or on the court. Daily interaction and daily demonstration. If each day, make sure that when you're interacting with your athletes, you're demonstrating the person that that you want them to be. If you like, showing up on time, having great attitude, having great effort, you need to demonstrate those same things daily. And that takes us in, if you're going to require that consistency, we must exemplify that consistency. If you're going to ask those things of them every day, you need to also demonstrate those same things. Let them mirror what you are doing. taking a little turn here, we're going to get more into the challenging times, as we mentioned. And, we put this in the third quarter, but really this could happen at any time frame, right? And as I think about it in a game setting, at some point you're going to be dealt with some type of adversity, and you're going to have to fight through that. Well, this is very similar here when it comes to a relationship, right? There's, I think coaches sometimes could see this as a burden or a liability. But really, this is an opportunity to really build that relationship with your athlete and make it stronger. So we hope to give you some things to think about during this time.
So when it comes to challenging times, the first bullet point we have is being proactive versus reactive. And the first part of this is just applying the principles of the first two quarters. So, some of the things we talked about were reaching out and initiating conversation. I think we do this again during the third quarter. I think that's a critical component. And then just relying on the foundation that you've set. So hopefully at this point, you've started to develop your relationship with the athlete. So, rely on that relationship that you've built. And then from being proactive versus reactive, a lot of times we, as coaches, we might wait till things occur to try and fix them. But instead, the goal should be to try and maybe have some foresight and try to correct those things before they even occur. And maybe that's based off things that we have seen historically. And we try to share that with the athlete to prevent those challenging times or to help them through those challenging times. And an example we like to give is, with a rookie hitting that rookie wall, having a conversation with the athlete beforehand and saying, hey, look, you may hit a rookie wall at this point of the season. So in order to prevent that, what are some things that you're going to do or some things that you can do to minimize that? And I think when we have that conversation, as those things occur or as that might occur, the athlete, while he's going through the challenge, could say, oh, wait, me and coach had that conversation beforehand. And he has a point of reference to go to say, okay, we said that we were going to do this, or these are the steps that we walked through in order for me to overcome this challenge. So that's a key part in being proactive. And then the second point is just understanding the different challenges. There's a lot of different challenges that our athlete could face, and just I think it's important for us as coaches to understand the nuances of it and the differences of them. So, for the long-term rehab, all of the challenges surrounding that, or maybe it's changes in playing time or shifts with their role on the team, or maybe it's losing as a team in general. And lastly, we have personal adversities, and this could be anything. This could be an athlete that's going through a marriage or a divorce or a birth or a death, or maybe some things in the society, with the impact that we're seeing with COVID-19 or some of the racial injustices. There's different challenges that our athletes might face. And so, it's important to have that understanding surrounding them. I think this graphic is a perfect picture on the different influences that our athletes could potentially be facing. I like to call it an onion. And Purcell, this is found in an article by Purcell et al. And so at the center of this onion is the athlete. And so there's all those influences surrounding them, their different coping skills and attitudes. And then surrounding that is a microsystem. Those are the influences of coaches, the parents, the high performance staff or the sports medicine staff. And then surrounding that is the exosystem. So those are the different influences, that are surrounding their sport, the team. And then ultimately around that is the macro system. And that's just those influences from the public, the environment, society. And I think a lot of times as performance coaches, we think of the macro when it comes to periodization, but we don't always think of the macro when it comes to, the different influences surrounding the athlete. And like Evan mentioned before, oftentimes, as coaches, we may see the challenging time as a negative thing, but it's not always the case. I think it's an opportunity for us to also try and strengthen our relationship with the athlete. And so it definitely can be something that can be positive. But before we trying to turn it into a positive thing and see it as an opportunity and put on our motivational hat, we have to have a feel for the situation. We have to know when to be motivational and when to just listen to our athletes. And when we say don't just hear them, listen, I think it's important for us to truly listen to them, pick up on the subtle cues, what's their demeanor like, what's their body language like when you guys are having that conversation. I think we're given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So I think, this is that opportunity for us to really listen in and pick up on some of the things that they're going through. And once we've listened to them, I think after that, then we can put on our motivational hat and say, okay, look, this is how we're going to make this, this is how we're going to flip this situation and take advantage of it. And it's an opportunity for us to make our relationship stronger. And it's an opportunity for us just to overcome an obstacle together. And Professor Joette found in her research that when an athlete is facing a challenging time, it's important as coaches that we provide hope and solutions for them. And the only way we can do that is if we have clear expectations and goals, like as Behad et al. Found in his article. So, if there's an athlete that's going through a rehab, be clear with them on what that rehab is going to look like. These are some of the challenges that you're going to face. This is what it's going to look like on a day in and day out basis. So how are, and talk them through it again, so how are we going to handle this? And then while we do that, or after we do that, then we can hold them accountable to that. And we can say, look, this is what we talked about before. This is what you said your goal is. So let's continue to work towards that goal. And let's continue to follow through on the steps that we discussed beforehand. So it's important for us to just continue to be transparent with them. And when it comes to goal setting, Desi and Ryan found that it's important for us to try and use the self-determination theory. And that's just basically using 3 basic psychological needs, which are competence, relatedness, and autonomy. And competence is just the athlete having a clear understanding of the goal, and their relatedness to the goal is referring to, how related they feel to the goal, sorry. And then autonomy is the last piece. And so that's just them feeling included in the plan and in developing their goal. I think that leads us perfectly into our last quarter.
Just like Ernie said there, there's the autonomy side, and I think when we talk about this, if we're relating it to the game, eventually we're going to have to just let the athlete just do their thing, right? We're going to have to let them finish strong. We're not going to be able to tell them what to do anymore, and they're just going to have to do it themselves. And that's basically what we're going to talk about here is, creating this autonomy-driven atmosphere. Nick Winkelman has a great quote that we thought was necessary to add into this fourth quarter. And he says, an athlete can't show us what they can do until we stop telling them what to do. And that's exactly what we're talking about is we're letting go of the control. We're letting go of our ego, and we're allowing them just to have a feel and self-regulate.
Yep. So the first part in creating an autonomy-driven atmosphere is letting go of the ego. So, that's as coaches, we have to relinquish control and be okay with the athlete having a part in the plans. I think oftentimes, we don't like to do this as coaches because we feel the need to prove our worth and our value. But I think it's quite the opposite, that if we have equipped them and taught them correctly beforehand, then, by them making decisions in certain aspects of their training or certain aspects of their decision making or their decisions, that's actually proving our worth and our value right there. And then the next bullet point, it says, don't waste bullets on the unimportant because of the ego. Oftentimes we may have certain plans that we've created. It may be, we had a workout scheduled, but our athlete comes in and says, I'm not feeling it today. Maybe like the previous practices were tough. Or maybe they're going through some things outside of sport and they're just not feeling the workout that we have scheduled. I think it's important for us to not waste that bullet and to try and on something that may not be as important in the grand scheme of things, but instead say, okay, let's ditch that plan. Maybe instead of us 1 rep max testing today, maybe we just have a mobility session today, since you're going through some different things. So I think it's important for us to just not waste bullets on things that aren't as important. The next bullet point you see is trust built must be reciprocated. This relationship, it's a two-way street. It's a 50-50 relationship. It's not just the coach always dictating everything. It has to be a mutual agreement and a mutual understanding. And with that, the trust, we have to trust that they're going to apply what we've taught them and know what's best for them. And ultimately what it boils down to, when we allow more autonomy in the relationship, is that it builds their confidence. They become more confident knowing, okay, coach trusts me and thinks that I'm going to make the right decisions. So they become more confident, and they want to make the right decisions from there.
So we get into this, the navigator driver relationship is what me and Ernie talked about. And basically you're flipping roles, right? I mean, we're, maybe before, when we were the driver and we were bringing along the athlete with us, now we're just going to flip that role. We're going to let them drive, or maybe we're just sitting in the passenger seat. We got the roadmap open, we're telling them where to go, but they ultimately get to decide, so the coach provides the roadmap, but the athlete's the driver, and give them the pathways, let them choose which one to take. I view this as, maybe you have a training session, but you give 3 different options. They ultimately get out what you need out of them, but, they get to pick and choose what movements they want to do and what really gets them awesome, what they feel like gets them awesome. But why would we even do this? What are the benefits of letting go of the wheel? Well, Gonzalez et al. Actually found that the more they created that autonomy, atmosphere, there was a decrease in burnout throughout the season, an increase in overall motivation, and then an increase in effort and output. And ultimately, I think that's what, brings us to this last point here. Is Ernie talked a lot about the confidence that it builds. And then they get the satisfaction from knowing that they got to choose something. They got to be a part of that process. And ultimately what we're doing is we're increasing that performance or that experience that the athlete has in your work environment.
Sorry. To bring it to a close, the goal is to always finish strong. And, we may not have as much influence as we like or impact as we like on the win-loss column, but we can have an impact on how they perceive their environment. So we can, definitely help them to enjoy the environment, the working environment, enjoy being around the team, enjoy being with the organization to a much bigger level. And I think that should be our goal. And, we want to always challenge them, but also let them know that, we really care about them. And finally, I think the biggest thing is that, we want to leave a mark and an impact that lasts beyond our time with them. We want to be able to say, or we want them to be able to say, we went through a lot of bumps in the road, but I know that coach cares about me. And I know that, his impact on me was extended beyond the weight room or be extended beyond the court. And so I think that is a mark and a measure of an effective coach.
And, as Ernie mentioned, at the beginning of the presentation, this was mainly, around our experiences and the way that we've built relationships with our athletes. But we did base this on, quite a bit of research, as you can see. And we actually had the opportunity to interview 2 of the researchers, Dr. Andrea Becker and Dr. Sophia Jowett, and just kind of, delve more into, their understanding of the coach-athlete relationship.
And then here are some additional resources. And if you haven't read these books, I think these are great books that just talk, I think they can really help out for developing the coach-athlete relationship. It's not an extensive list by any means, but just some that we found helpful.
Lastly, I just wanted to leave you guys with, Just something that I received not too long ago from one of our All-American point guards who decided that, felt the need to give me a token of appreciation. And at times I sometimes battle internally, why I do this profession or what's the reason why I do it. And ultimately it really comes down to this. I think he felt like I was part of, his success. And I didn't really, view it, that, because all I really did was just provide him time. But that was all it really was he saw it as I was a big part of him because I gave my time, and we got to have, a lot more, conversations other than just queuing up, movements. It was bigger than that. It was about life. And so that was, like Ernie talked about, it's the impact that we left. And I believe that's what happened here was, I had, he impacted me and I impacted him. And just to wrap it all up, we'd just like to thank you guys for joining us today. Here's our contact information. If you guys ever want to reach out, about this topic or anything else, I'd love to talk shop if you guys have the opportunity. And just thanks for tuning in.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the platform.
Yes, sir. And I got a question right away. So I know that both of you were working with the pro players in the G League and the NBA, and both of you had a chance to work with college athletes. Can you tell there's a difference in between how you would build relationships with college athletes in college and high school and the ones who are already playing pro?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's so much a difference. It might just be the fact that they're definitely more mature, I feel like, in the pro setting. I kind of thought that maybe when I was going to work in the NBA that I was going to deal with more ego. And that's actually quite the opposite. I actually found that I deal with probably more ego in the collegiate setting because, these guys are coming from them being the best. But when they're in the NBA, everybody's the best, right? So it's like, they're one in a million in the NBA, but in college, they're coming from their AAU team, which they've been hyped up and told they're the greatest thing ever. So yeah, I mean, I think that barrier is usually the one that I usually have to overcome the most. But overall, I think building the relationship still applies, to both.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say, because I actually worked in the college setting before I came to the pro setting, and with the college setting, it's a little bit different. Like I learned that, as you work with professionals, they don't always have to do what you say. Whereas in the college setting, if I tell you to show up in the weight room or if I tell you to show up for treatment, you have to do it. In the professional setting, that's not necessarily the case. They'll show up when they want to show up, and that's just because just the culture of it, and I'll say the salary structure of it.
For sure.
So I definitely learned that building that relationship is so much more critical in the professional setting. But I don't think that just because that's the case that you don't use these principles if you're working with high schoolers or if you're working with college players. I mean, because as you just seen with Evan, he obviously is using using these principles, and as you've seen with Peyton Pritchard, I mean, he obviously appreciated Evan, actually taking the time to build a relationship with him. And I think there's tons of coaches, across different settings that are doing that. But at least for me, I learned it in working with professionals.
Mm-hmm. And obviously you guys mentioned it a little bit in the beginning, but I still wanted to ask, how did you come up with the whole concept? Why did you decide that it was important for you? And the reason why I'm asking, because there's still, if we're talking about basketball in Europe, I still see coaches who I want to say they are more of a dictators, where they don't care much about what the player thinks, but they want him to do something just like a soldier. So what clicked, or what happened where you were like, okay, we have to pay attention more to that?
Yeah, no, I think it's like Ernie just mentioned. It's the fact that in the NBA, guys don't have to do what you ask. And
Mm-hmm.
so we thought it was necessary. It was to create that environment, that guys want to be in, so that then you don't have to demand anything, right? Like it's
Okay.
just, it auto regulates itself because they want to be in there because you've created such a good work environment that they enjoy being around you. They enjoy being around the staff, and you enjoy being around them, and you enjoy seeing them. And so that's probably something that I definitely learned, being a part of with our staff there, in the NBA, and knowing and appreciating how valuable it really is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, he said it all. That's the main part, and hopefully that's like the message that we're trying to give with the presentation. It's like, you want to create the environment. That's kind of like that last the closing remarks. You want to create an
Mm-hmm.
environment that the athlete enjoys being in. Where he wants to be around the team. Like in the NBA, you're with each other every day. Like you're with each other every day. There's really no day off throughout the season. So you have to create an environment that the players want to be. They want to be around you. They want to be around the team. Otherwise, it just becomes like it becomes a tough environment to work in. So I think just
Yeah.
creating that environment that the players enjoy being in is so critical.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what?
Some,
Yeah. Sorry.
sorry, it's just something to add on to that. It was just, I think when I started hearing people talk a lot about the emotional intelligence or the relationship side, um, previously I used to think it was a very like soft tactic, or like, oh, those guys must talk about that because they're very soft on their athletes. What I come to find out, it was like, it's very opposite. I wanted to find out more about it because I wanted to push my athletes more, and I wanted to see how I could get more out of them and like get more potential from them. So like, and that's exactly what it's done, is like that the more that I've made them, comfortable, and the more that I've gotten to know them and build that relationship, I can really have those tough conversations with them that I probably couldn't have had, prior, if I didn't do those things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what advice would you give to younger coaches who are maybe just starting, or you probably both of you guys have interns or somebody who's just volunteering to help or just trying to get into there? What would you recommend them how they should act in order to start building their environment, even though they're not the main guys, but they're more of like a support system?
I think even though whether you're an assistant or an intern, I think there's definitely ways you can do it. I think like first off, just get to know the players. I mean, I think since you're not the head, you're more on the I call it the grassroots level, so you can
Mm-hmm.
actually get to know the players a little bit better. You know what I mean? Like you can start to ask them whenever they're in the weight room. Don't be shy. Say like, hey man, like what are some things you liked before,
Mm-hmm.
like in your training, or just ask questions about who they are, like oh, where are you from? I think that's an easy one. What you have, like brothers and sisters, finding out about their family. There's easy questions that you can do to like start to build that relationship and start to create that environment where it's like, okay, these coaches, they don't just care about the court, or they don't just care about the weight room. No, they care about who I am. And so I think as an intern or as an assistant, you're in a perfect position to do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, like I try to watch it as much as I can. Like even when I was an assistant with the Kings, like I think of times when a lot of time you only have maybe one guy come in at a time, and that's like the perfect opportunity where like if that used to be Ramsey's guy that he was working with, me and Ernie would just still be on the floor and just talking shop,
Mm-hmm.
with that guy, and it was just a great way for us to continue to build that relationship, or to foster that, even if we weren't really doing much. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great
Yeah,
piece of
it might.
advice because, yeah, go for it.
I don't know. I was gonna say, yeah, it might have looked weird from the outside looking in. It's like they got three coaches to that one athlete,
So
but
what guy?
that's just how the way that we rocked at that point. It was just like we're just trying to be around. Like we just wanted to be around each other, and we wanted to like try and
Hmm.
build that environment to where it's like, no, we're here for you. Like whether you with him or him, we're here for you. So like
Yep. Yep.
that's the environment.
Uh-huh. That's a great advice because when I'm working with the pro players here, and sometimes you get an assistant, just somebody who's trying to at least to learn and maybe like try to get a feel of what it feels like to work with professional players. Some guys that would be like, very shy to ask a question or just to even like, they just say hello and that's it. And you have to say, all right, just relax. They're just normal people.
Yeah.
You can talk just like to everybody else. Nothing, nothing crazy.
Right.
Exactly.
But yeah, I wanted to thank you for finding the time to do it. I love that. It's just, I feel that not that many people cover that topic, and you speaking about it and how coaches can build relationships with the players, that's valuable.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And like I said, we both enjoy talking about it. So, it doesn't even really feel like a presentation in our eyes, because it's just something we just love talking shop about. So
Yeah.
Yep. Appreciate it,
more people definitely gotta learn about it and gotta hear you guys speak. So whenever we upload it to YouTube, it should be within the next couple of days. I'll make sure I send both of you the links, and also since you registered, we'll already either me or Nick, probably Nick, will email it all the links to you guys, because that information, more coaches need to hear it. And I even there's a message from basketball coach for Teska Youth Academy. He's saying, thank you, need to rewatch this. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Right.
All right. Thank you, guys. And
I
just wanted to say one more thing. Since Evan and Ernie, they mentioned that, but if you have questions to them, feel free to message. They are responsive.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bossy.
All right. Thanks, Bob.
Yep. Have a good day.
You too.